government forcing these children to wear masks, and this is where the reduced learning's coming in, they're spending 30% of their time trying to get that child to wear that mask the correct way, and it's still not working, so they're losing that 30% of the time, instead of teaching the children what they should actually be learning.
Representative Dominic LaRicchia among those voicing an opinion as the House Education Committee debates the Unmasked Georgia Students Act. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers on this day 32 of the Georgia legislative session and our annual hour-long special on the budget. I'm Donna Lowry in Atlanta. More on the bill that would allow parents to decide whether their children should wear a mask while in school coming up. Also today, Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens visited the Capitol to talk about his initiatives dealing with crime issues. But we'll spend most of the show breaking down the state budget, looking at where the money will go and how the state plans to spend some of the $3.7 billion in revenue surplus. We have the legislature's top budget gurus. They're with us in the studio. Now, let's head to the Gold Dome and Capitol correspondent Brenda Waters for a look at the day's news. And Brenda, it was pretty quiet in both chambers today, wasn't it?
Indeed, it was, Donna. Hi there. All was quiet on the House and Senate floors. No bills, no debate, and both chambers adjourned early. But there was a press conference at the Capitol this morning. It was attended by Democratic state, city, and county leaders. It addressed crime and quality of life in Atlanta. The press conference, organized by Senator Sonia Halpern, gave an update on how the city is coping with crime.
The people standing beside me today and countless others are working every day to improve our infrastructure, keep people safe, and show the world why Atlanta is the crown jewel of the South.
Mayor Andre Dickens laid out his plan and what he's already completed with fewer than 100 days under his belt as mayor.
In January, we signed a 10-year lease with Cousins Properties to house a new precinct in Zone 2 in Buckhead. I'm happy to say that construction on that project is moving forward each and every day. We plan to staff this new precinct with at least a dozen officers by this summer. Some of these officers may come from either of the two recruiting classes that we have, which will graduate this spring and summer.
Mayor Dickens says he is laser focused on hiring 250 more officers this year, adding applications are up for those who want to join the Atlanta Police Force. Since taking office, the mayor has said the most important issue is keeping residents safe.
You have seen the Phoenix Air Unit in the sky, this helicopter that's flying about that are catching thieves and street racers.
When asked about recent murders in the city,
these are not strangers that are being involved in these killings. This is not random. These are things that can be avoided, a lot of domestic issues. So we're working on that. That's not just a cops with badges and guns solution. This is a community response, something that says that we need to learn how to settle disputes in a better way.
Also here at the Capitol, Senate Bill 514 passed out of the House Education Committee this afternoon, 11-6. Now, this is a bill endorsed by Governor Kemp. It's called the Unmasked Georgia Students Act. It prohibits local school districts from imposing mask mandates, giving parents ultimate control in deciding whether to mask their children in the classroom. When Senator Clint Dixon introduced the measure, it received a broad support from Republicans on the committee.
Would anything in this bill prohibit me as a parent, if I want my child to wear a mask in their school for any reason, whether it be a COVID-19 or a flu or any other local outbreak, would I be prohibited as a parent from doing that?
No, you would not, Representative.
Would my wife, if she decided due to her own personal medical needs, had her doctor's advice, would there be anything in this bill that would prohibit my wife from wearing a mask?
No, sir.
Okay. And has anybody had any conversation about the opposite side of what would be like if we were having a conversation about mandating that no masks could ever be worn at any time and the encroachment on that freedom? Has that topic come up during your debate on this issue?
No, sir.
Okay, well, I think that's the other side of the coin that has been lost, and I appreciate the bill.
SB 514 could go to the House floor before this legislative session ends. That's my Capitol Report. Donna, back to you.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Tonight's topic for the rest of the hour is the state budget. Legislators have just one job every year, and that's to pass a balanced budget. It's the only requirement of the General Assembly in the Constitution. The House recently passed its version of the fiscal year 2023 budget. Now it heads to the Senate. And in this hour, we get a close-up look at what's in the $30.2 billion state spending plan. We'll get that breakdown from the experts, the pair who lead appropriations in each chamber. In the House, Chairman Terry England of Auburn in Barrow County, and in the Senate, Chairman Blake Tillery of Vidalia in Toombs County. And Chairman, I want to thank you both for joining us once again on Lawmakers.
Absolutely.
Love the show. Before we get started, a quick disclaimer. The Georgia Public Broadcasting is a state agency, and we also get some funding in the state's budget. So let's begin with the one word repeated quite a few times in the House budget highlights, and that's restores. That word sums up a lot of what's in this opening plan. House Bill 911 supports the governor's recommendation to permanently restore nearly $640 million eliminated from the fiscal 2021 budget. And Chairman England, you've served as the budget chair for 11 years. So can you reflect on the difference this year from recent history when you've had to do the budget?
It's actually harder.
Really?
Harder with money than it is without. A lot more folks coming and having ask and request and asking for different things than in a year when we're in a cut budget, of course. And I think at that point, everyone realizes, okay, we're just not going to get anything extra. But and I think Chairman Tillery will echo this as well, that a year with some money is a lot harder job than a year without.
So what do you say, Chairman Tillery?
Completely agree.
Yeah, so are people coming to you, lawmakers coming to you a lot more this time, you think?
They are, and everyone has a good idea that works for their region, but then we have to put them all together for the state.
So it's interesting. No, I want to talk about the revenue surplus, $3.7 billion at the end of fiscal 2021, in part because of the federal COVID-19 relief funding and months of continuing revenue growth in the state. And I spoke to Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan about it during an interview I did with him a few weeks ago.
Certainly, there's tons of money, and that's not just because of accident. That's because we budgeted very conservatively through the beginning and middle parts of the pandemic. Now, hopefully, we're on the tail end of it. We'll see economic activity kind of take its own weight. But one of the cautionary tales that I continue to tell folks are, look, these unprecedented budget surpluses will not last forever, and so let's make sure through the budgeting process that we don't create kind of unfunded mandates in the future. Let's make sure we take care of those that we need to in this period of time, where we still have some hay in the barn, but make sure we don't commit future legislatures into very, very tough, difficult decisions if the economy slows down, because it will.
Yeah, so Chairman Tillery, the Lieutenant Governor, talked about it slowing down, and I guess eventually it will. What are your thoughts on that? And how tough is it to know that that's an eventual prospect?
Well, I'll tell you, it's really hard to pour mouth when you've got $4 billion in surplus in the bank, and Chairman England and I have had to go through that. But also, if you look at the February numbers, you'll see revenue growth was 1% in February. So we do know that there is an end to the sugar high, and at that end, there's going to be people, either us in these seats or others in these seats, who are going to have to balance the state of Georgia's finances, and that's going to be difficult.
Yeah, would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It will be. It will be.
It'll be tough, but right now, enjoy the sugar high. I like that. I like the sugar high. But here's a look at some of the highlights. Let's look at them and where the money is going. And the largest chunk, 53%, goes to education, more than $15.9 billion. And that includes K-12, the University System of Georgia, and the Technical College System of Georgia. And next, with about 24%, is Health and Human Services, which includes the Department of Community Health and the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. Public Safety, 7.5% or so of the budget, or $2.2 billion. It's for the Department of Corrections, the GBI, and the Department of Safety. And 7% of the budget goes to the Department of Transportation. And general spending on the government operations, which includes everything from the court system to driver's services, that makes up about 7%. So, and then there's, like that other category. So, Chairman Tillery, tell us, is the cost to operate Georgia's government, it's pretty lean, isn't it?
It is. I think that slide you just showed is probably the most evident of Georgia's priorities. If you look at, you've heard for years, if you want to know a family's priorities, look at their pocketbook, look at their checkbook. That's the checkbook of Georgia. And you see that those numbers show you 77% goes in 2 line items, education and healthcare. Those are the things we value. And then after that, we figure how we're going to spend the remaining 23% on everything else in Georgia.
Yeah, and I understand that that information, I mean, what we've seen over the years is even in terms of the people we have working in government, that's even gone down since like the 1980s. Like we've been able to cut positions. Of course, technology has helped with that.
It has. We are running at the lowest number of state employees that we've had since we started doing personnel head counts back in the 80s. And of course, technology has played a big role in that, allowing individuals to be more productive. We're counting less on paper and more on electronic records that can be handed off a whole lot easier than paper copies of a lot of things were. So it has certainly changed, and it allows us to direct those dollars instead of into personnel into services. And I often say that at the end of every state dollar is a person. And everyone's expectation of the state, depending on, it doesn't matter income level. The person from the highest income to the lowest income all have a certain expectation of the state. And it's our job, Chairman Tillery and I's job, to try to figure out how it is we balance all that.
And it's a tough job, and we thank you for it. But Chairman England, I want to talk a little bit about the largest chunk of the budget, education. Let's spend some time on that. The House budget calls for the most state funds ever appropriated to K-12 education in this state. It fully funds QBE and restores austerity cuts. And Chairman England, you're going to make the state's 181 school districts pretty happy.
Well, we hope so. We hope so. And it does. We were first able to fully fund QBE about 5 years ago, I guess it was the first time. And it feels good when you can kind of put that behind you and get that done. And it is it's a huge priority for the state. It's a huge priority for the General Assembly and for our governor. And so it's a good feeling to be able to do that and fully fund the higher ed education funding formula as well.
Yeah, for you can remember when you really had to make those budget cuts back in 2000, 2008, 2009 or so, and the school districts were really hurting.
It was a very tough time at that point. And, the school systems have done an outstanding job since that period of time. It's kind of a three-way partnership in education funding. So you have the local piece that comes from property tax, you have the state piece that we deal with, then you have the federal piece. And typically what we've always seen is that when one hits a rough patch, the other one can kind of make up for it. Well, in 08, 9, 10, 11, all three partners were hitting a rough patch. And what we've seen, the school systems have done an outstanding job of building reserves themselves. That was something they really didn't focus on prior to that. Now they focused on it very well, and to the point that most of our school systems are combined together. Our school systems have just about the same size reserve that the state of Georgia itself actually has.
That's really good to know. I remember back then that we saw what was going on at the federal level, but it took a while for it to kind of trickle down to the local level and the school districts, and then it hit them hard when it did.
It did. And we had about $1.6 billion in reserves at that point in time, and within just a little over a year's time, that $1.6 billion was gone, and we were down to about $116 million at the point that Governor Deal took office, which was enough to operate the state for about 2.5 days.
Wow. That's amazing to think about that. Chairman Tillery, I've heard some school districts already talking about school enrollment going down because of pandemic-related issues. Does the budget tell us anything when it comes to that?
Well, the funding formula is based upon headcount, so it would be reflected. And there's still some time for the Senate to make some adds and look at quality measures, even in the K-12 setting.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So now we've had it come out of the House. Now the Senate is looking at it right now, right? What's that process like?
Oh, it's a ton of fun. Long hours. Some people are probably listening to see if I'll give away some of the secrets before it rolls out of committee Thursday morning or Wednesday morning. So.
Okay, all right. So we won't have you spill the secrets here. We wanted something like that. But Chairman England, the House budget calls for more than $700,000 in additional money for school nutrition plans to assist school districts in keeping school lunches affordable. And I would imagine school systems are struggling like the rest of us with the rising costs of food.
They are. And, you know, we realize that, and, you know, the federal government has helped some in that aspect. We're trying to help some in that aspect as well. There's also another piece in the budget that's not in the education piece, but deals with food banks and trying to get money out to some of the food banks. And some of the food banks, of course, participate with the school system, not necessarily for in-school nutrition, but for the out-of-school nutrition piece. And that was something that Governor Kemp had put in his original package to do that as well. And so, you know, understanding that the cost of goods, and whether it's, you know, copier paper or apples or oranges or whatever, has increased significantly. We've tried to offset a little bit of that.
Yeah, we've got the food banks, but we have Georgia Grown, and all of that has to factor into things. And I know the school districts are looking at it. So let's talk now about higher education a bit. Chairman Tillery, there's also a move to get rid of the fee a lot of parents of college students want to see go away, the special institutional fee. And I spoke to Senator Sally Harrell about that in the show. It was instituted in 2009 during the Great Recession, but when things got better, it didn't go away. It looks like it might be going away?
It looks like it will, and that's a tribute to Governor Kemp and the things that he was able to add into his budget before it came over to the House or the Senate. And I think he struck a deal with the Board of Regents and Chancellor there to make sure that families weren't impacted by that fee going forward. Yeah. And appreciate his leadership there. Yeah,
so some smaller schools, $170 a semester. Georgia Tech, $540 a semester. So it was a lot of money that parents had to look at.
Right.
And so that might be going away, finding a way to fill that money, that money coming in a different way for now. Okay. Chairman England, there are priorities in several areas to expand some of the professions and make some more appealing in areas where there's been turnover. And the House budget had $1.7 million as part of a package for canceling loans for those who work locally for the state in law enforcement and medical examiners at the GBIs. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, you know, we're seeing an incredible turnover within the state forces, but also on the local level as well as it relates to law enforcement. And in particular, at the GBI and Director Reynolds trying to keep some forensic examiners on staff. And we've been working with them. Chairman Tillery and I have both been working with them now for about a year, or actually a year and a half, on trying to get more forensic examiners in place around the state. And we're continuing to see that we're just not having a whole lot of luck there. So we're trying to up the ante there to allow him to sweeten the package, so to speak, to some of those individuals to get them onboarded, so that, you know, when a body does come to the crime lab for an autopsy, it's not there for 6 weeks. You can get a turnaround in a few days, so that the families can get closure, so that law enforcement knows that if they've got something, they need to go forward and prosecute. So just trying to speed that process up, and it's been a little bit of a tough road to try to figure out how to make that happen.
Well, the loan forgiveness will make a difference for those who are in school, and they're knowing that if they go into the profession, they'll be able to have their loans forgiven a little bit. So we're just getting started. We're going to talk a little bit more about public safety later in the show, but let's take a break. And when we come back, let's talk about health and human services and what's in the budget from the massive bill to overhaul Georgia's mental health delivery system. You're watching Lawmakers on GBB.
Cigna is a proud partner of Georgia Public Broadcasting and Georgia Lawmakers. Cigna's mission is to improve the health, well-being, and peace of mind of those we serve. More at Cigna.com to learn how you can help support your employees' physical and emotional well-being.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
Georgia Humanities, connecting people and communities across Georgia to encourage conversation, education, and understanding. Find out more at www.georgiahumanities.org.
We are the Southern Environmental Law Center. At SELC, we not only take on the toughest environmental challenges, we win, forcing the removal of more than 250 million tons of toxic coal ash, defeating repeated attempts to bring offshore drilling to our coasts, and securing clean air and water protections for communities across our region. Your most powerful environmental defender is rooted right here in the South.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've always had a plan. Just never really planned how to do this. Today I'm announcing I will not be seeking re-election for another term. You know, with age comes wisdom too. And as a young man, I always had a plan, and I had a plan to be here one day. The Lord consented, and I feel like the Lord has told me now it's time to move on.
That from one of our guests tonight, the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, Terry England. Welcome back to Lawmakers for our 1 hour long budget show. Also with us, the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Blake Tillery. On February 17th, Day 18th of the legislative session, Chairman England made that announcement about not running again, and it shocked a lot of people. The outpouring of affection was so great that Speaker David Ralston had to take a break. And Chairman England, tell us a little bit about that day.
It was kind of tough, but it was a long time in coming. And having served in the House now for 18 years, and that's about 10 or 12 years more than I ever dreamed it would be. And so it was tough to get up there that day, but I felt like I needed to do it then to let my folks back home know that I wouldn't be running again, so that they would have an opportunity to size up my replacement, and didn't feel like I wanted to go to the last day and let them know at the last second. So I wanted to be fair to them, and they've been fair to me. So
really 10 or 12 years more than you thought you'd stay.
Yes,
yeah,
ma'am.
so it was time to leave, huh? Well, I spoke to Speaker Ralston about you recently, and here's what he had to say.
Terry England is first of all, is my dear, dear friend, and has been for the time we've been here together. And so that one's going to hurt on a personal level as well as a legislative level. But nobody works harder than Terry England. Nobody. He is here through the year, day in and day out, and he's working with his budget people and staying on top of their budget issues that kind of percolate up during the summer, the fall. And he puts in the work. He's honest. I can trust Terry England to tell me the truth. And that's important in an appropriations chairman. So he's very, very honest. And he cares about people. You know, he has a heart for trying to help people, and I love that about him. So he's going to be a big loss. I mean, there's no question. He's going to be tough to replace, and I've already had people coming to me wanting to replace him next year. I said, you're going to have to give me time to work through this a little bit. You know, it's too early.
So, Chairman England, you were elected to the House in 2004, and that was 2 years after Speaker Ralston. So I would imagine that had a lot to do with this friendship that you guys have forged.
We became friends early on. I remember, I think it was my first year. He was Chairman Ralston at that point, and he'd stepped outside to meet with someone. He came back in, he says, well, I understand you know Johnny Barnes. I said, yes, sir, I do. He's a very good friend of mine. He said, well, John Barnes happened to be his high school agriculture teacher. And me and Mr. Barnes had been longtime friends as well. And he said, anybody that Johnny Barnes thinks as much of as he does of you pretty good folks. And we just kind of started building on that, and we've been we've been on the mountaintop together, and we've been in the valley together as well.
Yeah, it's been quite a few years together. He had wonderful things to say about you. And Chairman Tillery, you're new to the budget process. You took over after the sudden death of Chairman, well-beloved Chairman Jack Hill, who died suddenly in 2020. And I have to ask you what it's been like working with Chairman England.
Well, one, it's gone really fast. It's hard to believe it's been 5. By the time we're done, it'll be 5 budgets, 3 general and 2 amended. So it's just so hard to fathom it's gone that fast to begin with. But then England, he's been such a rock, not only to the House, but to the state as a whole. And he's going to be someone that, while he may not physically be in the building, his fingerprints will be here for a long time.
Yeah, well, we'll let you both say a few more words about your staff and everybody at the end of the show, but I wanted to make sure we got that in and we didn't get rushed at the end. So let's talk about the biggest bipartisan work in this session, the effort to get Georgia out of the basement near the bottom of the states when it comes to mental health care. This is Speaker Ralston's major push for this session, and House Bill 1013 is massive and comes with major budget needs. It's $30 million, much of it passed on to the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. So let's look at it a little bit. The House budget expands accountability courts, suicide prevention supports, and the availability of crisis beds. On the workforce side, it increases the salaries of state psychiatric hospital nurses and health aides. There are also funds for an additional 20-bed jail-based competency restoration program pilot. So, Chairman England, can you explain a little bit of all of that? It's a lot, I know.
It is a lot, and there's a lot of moving parts into that. And there's some that bleeds over into law enforcement. There's a lot of behavioral health and developmental disabilities, and a lot of it comes out of a commission that met for the last 2 years. And one of our former colleagues, Kevin Tanner, had been kind of the chair of that, and they'd looked at every aspect possible in mental health and behavioral health and developmental disabilities throughout the state. And we've heard from law enforcement for years that there are issues that they can't find placement for individuals, and read something over the weekend that where when surveyed, the sheriffs around the state said that over 50% of their calls are not dealing with someone breaking the law, but it's something to do with someone in mental health crisis. And this has kind of been building, and Georgia's not unique in that either. And we're seeing it, and our colleagues that we talked to in other states have seen and been dealing with some of the same issues. And so it's a wide-reaching package. The bill itself is a wide-reaching package, but also the moves we made in the budget are very wide-reaching as well, trying to get those services in place. And part of that is the workforce piece and making sure there are enough people there that can deliver the services for those individuals in need. Again, a chance for forgivable loans for people who go into the field. How important is that part of it? Well, and that's, one of the things we've been kind of knocking back and forth trying to figure out is how do you get more young people interested in going into that field? And so we actually made a move in the amended budget to go ahead and put $10 million in the Service Counselable Loan Program at Student Finance to go ahead, so those kids that are getting ready to graduate high school this year, those kids that are already pursuing one of these fields in college would know that there's something there that, if they're trying to make the decision which pathway they're going to take, they can look at it and say, okay, well, my loans will be forgiven if I go that direction versus something else, and trying to do what we can to lure them into that field, because we have a huge deficit in the number of individuals that are trained to help treat people. Yeah, really high turnover. But knowing that if you go into that field, that you'll be able to have some of that college debt that everybody deals with. Just about, in general, those are not very high-paying jobs. Right. It's part of that profession. You don't go into it to get rich. You go into it to help people. But at the same time, you've got to pay off that student loan. You've got to try to pay rent. You got to buy groceries. You got to raise a family. And so we just got to try to put all those pieces together that make it work for someone. Yeah, so I want to talk about the accountability courts, because a lot of people don't understand that. Chairman Tillery, what are they and what do they do? Yeah, well, they started really under Governor Deal and his criminal justice reform package. They've continued under Governor Kemp. It's an acknowledgement that sometimes throwing money or the old solutions that have worked before maybe aren't the best ways to get the results that we need now. And you're going to see the Senate continue that same trend, not only on accountability courts, but in other areas of the budget, looking at K-12 situations. We've already done it together with the House on
skilled nursing facilities, and we may even jump into community service boards and try to, again, incentivize quality outcomes rather than just inputs.
Yeah, so the fact that workforce issues, part of this budget, workforce issues are a big part of this budget, making sure that you're dealing with high turnover in a lot of areas, right?
We were, particularly in Department of Juvenile Justice and Department of Corrections. So you saw in the amended budget, the House and the Senate came together to make a special add on top of the additions that the governor had already put there just for people resources, human resources. And there'll be other places, particularly in nursing categories, that I'm sure we're going to have to come together and do that on in the general, sorry.
Yeah, so I'm sure that just like, and people probably don't think about it, just like in the private sector, in the state, people were leaving jobs. And it's because of the pandemic-related reasons, a number of different reasons, and that's what we've seen in a lot of areas. There's a real push in this budget for people getting to get raises, to get bonuses, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and Chairman Tillery had alluded, Juvenile Justice Commissioner the other day, I met with him, and he was elated to be able to tell me that his turnover rate went down 7%, went from 97% to 90% a year. So 90% turnover. He was happy.
90%.
He was happy to get a 7% reduction. So, you know, as the chairman alluded to, in the amended budget, we made a move there. We've carried forward into the big budget, and you know, to hear the commissioners and agency heads talk about 40 and 50% turnover is nothing unusual. And we're seeing the same thing in private industry as well. Just as you alluded to, in the pandemic, a lot of things, people were, the great resignation, I think I heard it called on the radio the other day, but a lot of folks just kind of reevaluating what they're doing, and it's made it tough on folks that, whether it's the state or private industry, either one, to keep qualified personnel.
So you really had to look at that when it came to this budget and making sure that you're trying. Do you think the news that this budget is going to include the $5,000 more, for state employees, even just that news coming out is helping already?
What we've heard so far is that there are people that have changed their minds about leaving and are willing to stay.
I can't imagine 90% turnover, and then so you have to start training all over again, and that's a big cost when it comes to that. Okay, so we're going to take a break now, and when we come back with much more on the budget in this hour-long special, you're watching Lawmakers on GPB.
Cigna is a proud partner of Georgia Public Broadcasting and Georgia Lawmakers. Cigna's mission is to improve the health, well-being, and peace of mind of those we serve. More at Cigna.com to learn how you can help support your employees' physical and emotional well-being.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
Georgia Humanities, connecting people and communities across Georgia to encourage conversation, education, and understanding. Find out more at www.georgiahumanities.org.
We are the Southern Environmental Law Center. At SELC, we not only take on the toughest environmental challenges, we win, forcing the removal of more than 250 million tons of toxic coal ash, defeating repeated attempts to bring offshore drilling to our coasts, and securing clean air and water protections for communities across our region. Your most powerful environmental defender is rooted right here in the South.
Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your love. God bless each and every one of you.
That's House Appropriations Chair Terry England on February 17th, when he finished his announcement that he would not seek another term. He received a prolonged standing ovation of about 45 seconds, I counted, from his colleagues in the House. The response was so overwhelming that afterward, Speaker Ralston called for a break in the session that day so that the House speakers could talk to him. And there you see them hugging. There were a lot of hugs that day, weren't there?
There were.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the session next year is going to be quite different. So, because you'll be gone and others who are hardworking, beloved, some running for higher office, some moving on to other things. So, are you feeling a little nostalgic at this point at all? Or are you still working too hard?
There's bits and pieces that you get nostalgic about, and then I get to thinking about next year. I'll be sitting at the house watching this on TV instead of being here. But yeah, I mean, this has been a dream of mine to be in the House since the 5th grade, and just to have the opportunity to do this has been a kid's dream come true.
Yeah, so 5th grade, you really knew that this is what you wanted to do.
Well, I didn't know about being Appropriations chairman,
right.
But I knew at that point that I wanted to be in the House.
Wow.
It was a 5th grade field trip to the Capitol, and walked into the chamber, and there was just something about it that felt right.
Were you ever a page?
No.
You weren't a page or anything like that, but just knew that was it.
No.
So there are 5th graders out there who are looking up to you and thinking about you.
I wanted to be a fireman and an astronaut and all that too, but
So as we welcome everybody back to Lawmakers, we just thought it was only fitting to talk about this. And while you're here, it's always good to get your flowers while you're still around for us to give you flowers. So,
True.
So once again, Chairman England, Chairman Tillery with us. And despite all the give and take at the Capitol, especially when it comes to budget issues, it's important to know these are the people working on that money, that there are people at the end of all that money we talk about. So with that, let's dig into another money issue. And it's a big one this year. We came into it talking about public safety. Chairman Tillery, we started the session hearing a lot about crime, so public safety was emphasized in the crime rates, and the revenue surplus is certainly going to help, isn't it?
It will. I think the House had various positions they added. If I counted them up, maybe 20 to 30 positions they added in their budget. I'm sure the Senate will have some as well. Again, realizing that if people don't feel safe, they're not going out to shop. They're not doing very much of anything, and we heard that from families pretty clearly.
Yeah. Chairman England, the GBI is getting $11.9 million for 67 positions. So let's look at them a little bit. Among them, 18 scientists and 7 crime lab technicians, 16 new positions in the medical examiner's office, 11 death investigator specialists, 15 special agents, 6 criminal intelligence analysts. That's a lot of new positions.
It is.
But necessary, as we talked about this turnover, but more than that, right?
It is, and a lot of it is just a backlog of cases that, whether it's scientific work or death investigations that need to be done, because kind of going back to our earlier comments about, families need to be able to move on and get closure if they've lost a loved one. During the pandemic, a lot of things got put on hold, and a lot of court cases got put on hold. So there's a lot of catching up to do there, and with that comes all of the investigation side that goes with those cases to make sure that they're getting taken care of, and that we're adjudicating these cases in a timely manner, because that's part of what our country is based on, what our Constitution is based on. That if you're accused, you get a speedy trial, and you have that chance to prove innocence as well. And a lot of that innocence many times gets proven by the evidence, by the science that is done. And GBI here in the state of Georgia is the best that I've ever seen at doing what they do. And, they're known throughout the country as being the best, and they truly are.
There's a lot for the GBI in the House budget, right?
Yes.
That was an area, you're talking about the backlog of cases. In order to do that, speeding them up, you had to have more people, right?
Got to have more people. We also did a small ad to allow them to, some of the things that could be farmed out to other labs to do, allow them to do some of that. They've been doing that along through the years, but allow them to speed it up a little bit more as well. But just trying to get the throughput there, because even pre-pandemic, there was becoming a backlog just because more people, more things happening in the state, and we had not really bolstered the GBI and the investigative services piece that much over the years, but we're trying to take care of 11 million people in the state now, and it takes more folks to be able to do that.
And so part of it will be getting the information out there that these jobs are available,
Yes,
won't it be?
it will be.
Yeah, so that's not your part of the job. You're probably happy about that.
Well, I think, a lot of folks look at the numbers on the piece of paper and they become aware of it pretty quick.
But you're competing with the private sector. Is that the toughest part of it?
You do compete some with the private sector in some of this, but what we see more on the GBI level, on Department of Public Safety, state troopers, you're competing more with localities. And when you have localities that can offer maybe better pay, but not necessarily better benefits, we have to still be competitive on the pay side, even though the benefits may be a little bit better. So our competition in law enforcement really becomes localities, counties and cities, and what they're doing there locally. And so that kind of becomes our main competition on for those individuals.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the benefits. How much so are we going to see more for benefits and benefits packages?
Well, you have to do a fringe rate multiplier on every time you do an ad.
Okay.
So anytime that you see an added position or even an increase in salary, there's a fringe rate multiplier on that as well.
Explain what that is.
Well,
Fringe rate multiplier. I'm confused. I don't know.
no, you're probably asking a question that a lot of folks that are watching are asking. A lot of folks that work with us might ask too. You've got to pay the benefits on that employee. So just like they do in public sector. So whether or not it's retirement or a state health benefit plan, that goes in about, what is it, about a 1.7%, 1.7 multiplier now.
Okay, and so you
Not
had to look
percent.
at all of that. So insurance rates will go up, and and making sure premiums are affordable to people, all of that kind of thing in this budget.
And we have an employer share and an employee share, and so the big part of what we have to worry about is the employer share, because that's what we have to budget for. And so, just like everything else, it has continued to go up over the years, and so that's what we have to make sure we've got it. When we say we're going to pay someone $100,000 a year, you got to realize all of these other things are kind of backing that number up as well.
Yeah.
Then add 60 to 70% for their benefits.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's expensive to hire people.
Right. And then the challenge will be hoping that you can keep this up year after year with this. And you'll be here for that.
That's going back to the first thing for the Lieutenant Governor's comment, that's really what he was saying is we know we're in a position right now where we have plenty, thanks to the taxpayers of the state of Georgia, but we have to be very prudent to not put ourselves in a position that as we see the cliff coming on the edge here with 11% inflation, among other things, some tax cut bills, et cetera, that we want to do for citizens, we got to be careful that we don't spend ourselves into a position where we can't.
A lot of people, when they think about those things, they think about that rainy day fund, and it's good right now. Talk about that and why people shouldn't really count on that.
Well, it's great right now. It is. You got roughly, as you said earlier, about $4 billion. But as Chairman England told you before, when they hit that crisis in 2008 and they went from $1.6 billion down to $116 million, that is etched in the minds of most legislators who were there, and even those of us who weren't. So you've got $4 billion, but if you've got a $30 billion budget, you've got just over 10 to 12% in the rainy day fund. So that gets you for a couple of months. Well, what are you going to do the remaining 10 months? State employees are still going to want to be paid.
Yeah, you said something about 2 days for something.
It was about 116 million at that point was 2.5 days operating.
Yeah.
So, our burn rate right now is a little over $2 billion, well, about $2.5 billion a month. And so it doesn't take a whole lot of time to go through that amount of money. And, those funds are one-time funds. So it's not like that they regenerate or that it automatically goes back into it. That's been from very prudent budgeting from governors, from the action of the General Assembly through the years to get back to that point. And, we're still shy of what normal business considers a prudent amount to have in reserves. It's about 6 months operating is what business schools tell you that you need to have set aside. And so we're still very shy of being anywhere near that.
Yeah, you're going to kind of miss this institutional knowledge that goes back a while, won't you? That remembers when the years things were so lean.
Right, you're seeing that when we're losing Chairman England, and also on our side, Senator Mullis was the only Republican who served in the minority. So there's a whole lot of institutional wisdom that's leaving on both sides of the chamber this year.
Oh, boy. Well, now I want to get into corrections a little bit, and we talked about it a little bit earlier. In the House budget, correctional officers, including those who work in the juvenile court system, the juvenile systems, are getting $2,000, and then above that, $5,000 cost of living increase. So talk about that a little bit. That's really important.
That was something that after we'd moved the amended budget into the Senate, that was an ad that Chairman Tillery and his folks came with that we agreed to, that we felt was something that was very prudent to do. So we carried it forward into the big budget, and because it wouldn't have been right to folks for us not to have had it in there and then send it over to them and folks wondering, well, am I going to get it or not? So, adding that additional $2,000 onto the $5,000 just for the, and again, these are positions that are 50 to 90% turnover rates that we've got to stem that tide.
Yeah, and so that the people who are getting this recognize that this is coming, so that so that helps you a lot on all of that. And we talked about the turnover rate. It's you keep talking about it. It's just something that you're just gonna have to work through, right? Maybe that next year we're not still talking about it.
Well, again, because Georgia stayed open, Georgia's economy is booming still. You're seeing that employers are still hiring, and as long as they're looking for workers, they're going to increase their wages, and it's going to put pressure on government workers as well, and we're going to have to meet that burden where we can.
Yeah. What are you proudest about this particular bill, this particular budget bill, I should say?
I think what we've been able to do for our people, the employees of the state of Georgia, the help that we're looking to give them, not only from the governor's original $5,000 COLA piece, but the other ads that we've been able to do. And, truly the people are what make government work. And, state employees get a bad rap a lot of times. But I tell you, I've traveled the state from corner to corner, north to south, east to west, and the folks that I have run into, regardless of what they were doing, were passionate about what they were doing, did it because they enjoyed serving people. And I think I think this budget makes a statement that we recognize and appreciate that.
Yeah, it used to be when you had like a government job, that was considered something that people stuck with forever. Right. It's not necessarily the case anymore, I guess.
It's not. There's a bill pending right now. I think it's going over to the House that GSEP's part of our retirement package to try to incentivize and hang on to employees after their 5th year, because we know that we lose, I think it's 40% of them by year 5. So there's work there, and you asked Chairman England what he's most proud of, and he said earlier, talking about realizing that every state dollar goes to a person. We have to realize also that it starts with our taxpayers as well. It starts with a person. And the thing I think I'm most proud about is through this whole process, while there have been times of plenty, we've tried to be so prudent so that we don't put ourselves into a box, or future legislators in a box where they can't make decisions that are going to be important for Georgia.
Yeah, one of the key steps in the budget process and is the governor's estimate that he makes of the budget, the revenue estimate. Can you talk about that a little bit and how important that is, or explain what that is? Who wants to tackle that one?
There have been times in the past where we have tried to assert ourselves more in that process, and the governors, while they're in the legislature, agree with us. But then, I guess if I had that ability too, I'd want to keep it myself. He sets the bar, and Governor Kemp has been very kind to work with us and Director Farr to keep us involved in the whole process, help us. While he makes the ultimate call, and that was always clear on setting the governors on the revenue estimate, helping us understand where he was coming from, talking with Dr. Dorfman, who's our state economist, among others. He has been extremely open in the process, and it's made it easier as we've continued to work through things that we're not always going to agree. But when you start from a point that you feel included, it's a whole lot easier to disagree and feel heard.
Yeah, how would you answer that?
Same, absolutely. I've had the opportunity in this role to work with 2 different governors. And as a history of the state of Georgia, all of our governors have always been fiscal conservatives, regardless of party. And, the Constitution in our state sets up the governor as a strong governor and sort of a weak General Assembly. But one of the key pieces, one of the key tools that the governor has in his toolbox is setting that revenue estimate. And in doing so, it does allow for being able to hold a little back into the rainy day fund from time to time by setting it a little bit lower than what it might actually be. You don't necessarily have to spend every dollar that's coming in. We try not to in our houses. We try not to in our businesses. We shouldn't in state government as well. You should always try to budget so that you have a little setback. And Georgia's been very fortunate throughout all the years of our state that we've had governors that have had that mindset.
Yeah, I guess there's some things that those of us personally can learn from what you guys are doing. I know that the budget is now, came from the House and now in the Senate. So talk about what happens in the Senate, and then this back and forth, the committee process, where you guys will determine the final budget.
Well, we have subcommittees just like the House does. So our subcommittee chairs work through their different portions of the budget. After they're done with that, they'll make subcommittee reports, and then you have 3 to 4 individuals who are, 3 on a conference committee who will eventually make a decision for what the Senate's position will be. We have to pitch that to the committee, pitch that to the Senate. Once it passes, then it goes to conference. So we're getting right down into that process now. We're probably going to be in a position to come out of committee this week, and which should set us up maybe on the floor this week, maybe on the floor at the beginning of next week.
Yeah, and that you like to have that. You certainly don't. This isn't something you wait till sine die on, right?
We have.
We
have a few times, but if you're going to have a conference committee, you've got to also allow time for the conferees to meet and to iron out our differences, and let the House see the error of their ways and come join us.
And what do you say to that? The error of your ways?
Well, we send the Senate a beautiful, perfect document.
It's perfect.
And it is, and they want to make changes in it. They have a different version of beautiful and perfect than we do, and so then we get in that room and try to hash out those differences, and that's it's been a pleasure working with Chairman Tillery doing that over the last couple of years, and it certainly was with Chairman Hill as well.
It occurred to me that, I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
All joking aside, it really is, the debates in the room are about how you're deriving at a number and what you're trying to accomplish. And there has never been a time ever that Chairman England or any of the House conferees have put us in a position to feel inferior. They've always been straightforward, just like I said with the governor earlier. It's not these, throw it down and take your ball and go home. It really is trying to convince the other side of what you're trying to do, and really trying to do both, what the House wants to do and the Senate.
So it's true compromise when it comes to that kind of stuff. Okay. I just wondered if, as we look at your 11 years of doing this, are you thinking of how different, you talked a little bit how different it is, but, I know that you're going to miss some of it, right?
I will.
Some of it you will miss.
I'll miss the people.
Yeah.
I've been incredibly blessed on the House side and working on the Senate side as well with our staff, our House Budget and Research Office staff and Senate Budget and Evaluation Office staff. You never have to worry about those individuals trying to do something untoward or for personal gain. It's all about trying to make sure that we're doing the right thing for those end users, the people that are actually, at the end of those dollars. And trying to make sure as well as we do all of this balancing that we're taking care of the ones that are letting us spend this money as well. And Martha Wigdon has worked with me just about my entire time as chairman in the House. She's been my budget director in the House Budget and Research Office. Her and Christine Murdoch have been there together, and I'm going to miss them. I'm going to miss working with Chairman Tillery and a lot of my colleagues. There's been some true lifelong friendships that I've made, and I intend to stay in touch.
Yeah, so usually, last year we let you guys thank some of your staffers. You've thanked a couple of them. Anybody else you want to mention?
Well, I'd better mention my wife.
Yeah.
Because she's the one that keeps the home fires burning, my dad too, and just, they're the ones that fix me peas and cornbread when I go home on the weekend, and that's kind of my comfort food, and, just make sure that everything at home's taken care of while I'm down here.
Yeah, we've got to think about that. All of the long days, people talk about you coming in before the sun is really up and leaving long after dark. And so your family has had to deal with that. And so you're a farmer, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're in a business owner. Tell us a little bit about your background. What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
I don't know yet. I really enjoy working on antique tractors and doing tractor restorations, and I've done a few of those. And I started one for myself 18 years ago, actually before I decided to run for office, and it's still not completed yet. So that's kind of the next project on the board in the shop, is to get that one done. And, the honey-do list.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there'll be a lot of that. How about you? There's some staffers you'd like to thank as we...
There's no way we could do this process without the Senate Budget Office. Melody Debussy and Brent Churchwell, others, Keith, Lindsay, Austin. When I start naming names, I'm going to leave one out and feel really bad about that later on. Caitlin. They've just done a really good job. And Courtney, who keeps our system going. We couldn't do it without them. And I appreciate the Lieutenant Governor and the Committee on Assignments for putting me in this position to begin with. You said it earlier, when I became chair, it was a rough day for the Senate. Yeah. Chairman England was such a kind figure, worked with us so well to get through that 14% budget cut originally. We had addition in our family, though, a baby, 9-month-old John.
Wow.
So that means I need to thank even more people. My wife's a physician. There's no way I could be here without her, and our parents and my in-laws who take care of him while we're in session. It takes a village. We're a part-time legislature, and it really does take a community to be able to support one of these seats.
Let's talk about that part-time legislature part. You want to tell people that's not necessarily true, right? Especially with your job.
It isn't for the two of us, for the Speaker, Lieutenant Governor. It is a full-time job, but it needs to be. You take in $30 billion in state funds and double that with federal funds. It takes the time to do it, make sure it's being done right.
Are people reaching out to you when you're not in session?
Oh, all the time.
All the time?
All the time.
Yeah,
yes.
Same with you?
It stays busy. Busy.
Do you feel ready to be I don't know, the seasoned guy in this whole process, and you've only been doing it since 2020.
Sounds old. I don't know that I'm ready for that, but
the dean.
I can tell you that I've been blessed to have two really good mentors, Chairman Jack Hill and Chairman Terry England. And those will be folks that I'll remember their stories and the things they've taught me long after I'm gone from the legislature. Chairman England, I'm personally going to miss you, but it doesn't hurt to tell you that, as Donna said early, before you get your flowers before you need them.
That's it. Absolutely. I want to thank you both for being here. Thank you so much. We wish you all the best. Thanks for all that you've done for Georgians over the years. So that's the end of our show. Join us tomorrow for Legislative Day 33, and have a good night.